Hello, mes enfants. Would you like to dance? Dance on till the morning, without a backward glance. Hello, mes enfants. I think that you must dance. I know you'd like to sit it out, but you won't have the chance. Winter's come. Hear his drum, he's beating on your heart. Hear the snow, another show, each man must play his part. I'm embarrassed to be in bed when you come. It's nothing, just a little fever that I'm treating with gin. I'm accustomed to these attacks, malaria I think, that I caught at the time when I was Pope. No, I'm only half joking. I know what you're thinking. It's very hard to disentangle the true from the false in what I'm saying. I admit you're right. I myself... You see, a person I knew used to divide human beings into three categories. Those who prefer having nothing to hide rather than being obliged to lie. Those who prefer lying to having nothing to hide. And finally those who like both lying and the hidden. I'll let you choose which category suits me best. But what do I care? Don't lies eventually lead to the truth? And don't all my stories, true or false, tend towards the same conclusion? Don't they all have the same meaning? So what does it matter whether they are true or false, if in both cases they are significant of what I've been and what I am? Sometimes it is easier to see clearly into the liar than into the man who tells the truth. Truth, like light, blinds. Falsehood, on the contrary, is a beautiful twilight that enhances every object. Well, take it how you like. I was Pope, named a Pope in a prison camp. Sit down, please. You're examining the room. Bare, to be sure, but clean. A Vermeer without furniture or copper pots. Without books either, for I gave up reading some time ago. At one time my house was full of half-read books. It's just as disgusting as those people who cut off a piece of foie gras and have the rest thrown away. At any rate, I've ceased to like anything but confessions, and authors of confessions write especially to avoid confessing, to tell nothing of what they know. When they claim to get to the painful admission, you have to watch out, for they're about to dress the corpse. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. So I put a stop to it. No more books, no more useless objects either. The bare necessities, clean and polished like a coffin. Besides these Dutch beds, so hard and with their immaculate sheets, one dies in them as if already wrapped in a shroud, embalmed in purity. You're curious to know my pontifical adventures. Nothing out of the ordinary, you know. Shall I have the strength to tell you of them? Yes, the fever is going down. It was all so long ago. It was in Africa, where, thanks to a certain Mr. Rommel, war was raging. I wasn't involved in it, no, don't worry. I had already dodged the one in Europe. Mobilised, of course, but I never saw action. In a way, I regret it. Maybe that would have changed a great many things. The French army didn't need me on the front. It merely asked me to take part in the retreat. A little later I got back to Paris and the Germans. I was tempted by the resistance about which people were beginning to talk just around the time I discovered that I was patriotic. You're smiling. You're wrong. I made my discovery in the metro passages at the Châtelet station. A dog had strayed into the labyrinth, big, wire-haired, one ear cocked, eyes laughing. He was cavorting and sniffing at people's legs. I have a very old and very faithful fondness for dogs. I like them because they always forgive. I called this one, who hesitated, obviously won over, wagging his tail enthusiastically a few yards ahead of me. Just then a young German soldier who was walking briskly along passed me. Having reached the dog, he caressed the shaggy head. Without hesitating, the animal fell in step with the same enthusiasm and disappeared with him. From the resentment and the sort of rage I felt against the German soldier, it was clear to me that my reaction was patriotic. If the dog had followed a French civilian, I'd not even have thought of it, but on the contrary, I imagined that friendly dog as the mascot of a German regiment, and it made me fly into a rage. Hence the test was convincing. I reached the southern zone with the intention of finding out about the resistance, but once there and having found out, I hesitated. The undertaking struck me as a little mad and, in a word, romantic. I think especially that underground action suited neither my temperament nor my preference for exposed heights. It seemed to me that I was being asked to do some weaving in a cellar for days and nights on end, until some brutes should come to haul me out from hiding, undo my weaving, and then drag me to another cellar to beat me to death. I admired those who indulged in such heroism of the depths, but couldn't imitate them. So I crossed over to North Africa with the vague intention of getting to London. But in Africa the situation was not clear. The opposing parties seemed to be equally right, and I stood aloof. I can see from your manner that I'm skipping rather fast, in your opinion, over these details, which have a certain significance. Well, let's say that, having judged you at your true value, I'm skipping over them so that you will notice them the better. In any case, I eventually reached Tunisia, where a fond friend gave me work. That friend was a very intelligent woman who was involved in the film business. I followed her to Tunis and didn't discover her real employment until the days following the Allied landing in Algeria. She was arrested that day by the Germans, and I too. But without having intended it, I don't know what became of her. As for me, no harm was done, and I realised after considerable anguish that it was chiefly just a security measure. I was interned near Tripoli in a camp where we suffered from thirst and destitution more than from brutality. I'll not describe it to you. We children of this half-century don't need a diagram to imagine such places. 150 years ago, people became sentimental about lakes and forests. Today we have the lyricism of the prison cell. Hence I'll leave it to you. You need only add a few details: the heat, the vertical sun, the flies, the sand, the lack of water. There was a young Frenchman with me who had faith. Yes, it's decidedly a fairy tale. The Du Guesclin type, if you will. He had crossed over from France into Spain to go and fight. The Catholic general had interned him, and having seen that in the Franco camps the chickpeas were, if I may say so, blessed by Rome, he had developed a profound melancholy. Neither the sky of Africa, where he had next landed, nor the leisures of the camp had distracted him from that melancholy. But his reflections, and the sun too, had somewhat unhinged him. One day, when under a tent dripping with molten lead, the 10 or so of us were panting among flies, he repeated his diatribes against the Roman. He looked at us with a wild stare above his week old beard. Bare to the waist and covered with sweat, he drummed with his hands on the visible keyboard of his ribs. He declared to us the need for a new pope who should live among the wretched instead of praying on a throne. And the sooner the better. He stared with wild eyes as he shook his head. Yes, he repeated, as soon as possible. Then he calmed down suddenly and in a dull voice said that we must choose him among ourselves. Pick a complete man with his vices and virtues and swear allegiance to him on the sole condition that he should agree to keep alive in himself and in others the community of our sufferings. "Who among us," he asked, "has the most failings?" As a joke, I raised my hand and was the only one to do so. "Okay, Jean-Baptiste will do." No, he didn't say precisely that, because I had another name in those days. He declared at least that nominating oneself as I had done presupposed also the greatest virtue, and proposed electing me. The others agreed in fun, but with a trace of seriousness all the same. The truth is that Du Guesclin had impressed us. It seems to me that even I was not altogether laughing. To begin with, I considered that my little prophet was right. And then with the sun, the exhausting labour, the struggle for water, we were not at our best. In any case, I exercised my pontificate for several weeks with increasing seriousness.